Ella, Chapter 2. A lot on my mind. She introduced herself and I told her who I was. The conversation started. The first thing she asked me after we introduced each other, and of course I got drinks, was who was the woman that broke your heart? I asked her, how do you know my heart is broken? She said, there's a lot of things that I know about men and I've seen your story a few times. So I told her nobody really broke my heart. And she said, well, obviously you're not with anyone, because if it was, the conversation would be different right now. I smiled, a little bit smirking, and said, we haven't even started talking yet for you to know that. And she said, well, again, I ain't lying. And I started smirking again. I said, no, I'm not with anybody. And she said again, who was the person that broke your heart? I told her, not anyone, I'm just between a new phase in my life. She said, well, I don't see any rings, so you married or are you separated? I told her I'm divorced, and now she said, no, you're not. I said, how do you feel as if I'm not? She replied, if you were divorced, you would have replied differently and said it differently. So again, who broke your heart? Knowing that she wasn't going to get off the subject, I honored the age of wisdom and I told her about my marriage and my divorce. I didn't have anything else to do, so I might as well go ahead and get it out of my system. I had to wait to get paid anyway, so I made the most of that moment, mind you. I don't talk to anybody out of the blue like this, especially about my past, but for some reason, I guess, I was at the bar. I got a drink, which was a cranberry and 7-Up, and I bought somebody a drink. She was an older woman, so maybe I can learn something and tell you that that conversation went from 15 minutes to buying a drink and introducing ourselves to 2 hours of me literally absorbing everything that she had to say. She had asked me, why wasn't I over my ex-wife? And I said to her, I want to be with this woman. And it took me 10 years for that to happen. And another 10 years I kept an oath to her. Because of the decisions that I made, ended up losing that woman because of a business situation. And I thought I could move on a long time ago, and it's just not in me. She asked, why won't you let her go? It seems as if she's already moved on. I told her, I just don't know how to do it, and I'm being honest. That's when she said, if I give you some strong advice, will you take it? I said, yes. She said to me, what do you believe in? I replied, do you mean, do I believe in God? She said, yes, but are you a Christian or are you Muslim, Buddhist, or whatever? I replied, I'm universal, but I practice an Afrocentric spirituality, but my culture is Islam. She said, okay, so you believe in putting God first in everything. I said, of course, I wouldn't have survived cancer had it not been for that divine spark. She said, you had cancer? I said, yes, stage 2 colon cancer. Lost 40 pounds in the process of battling it for 2 years, but no chemo and no radiation, all natural. She said, good. Now, why are you holding on to something that no longer is in your life, but you were able to get rid of the cancer? I actually told her I don't know. She replied with these words that really kicked off the conversation, which led to multiple dates and memorable nights, respectfully. She replied, I know a lot of Muslims, so you don't eat pork, right? I said, of course not. She said, have you ever eaten pork? I said, yeah, when I was a kid. She said, when was the last time you ate it? I told her, the last time I ate pork, I was 15 years old. She said to me, do you still remember what it tastes like? I said, yeah. She said, do you stop eating it and then go back? I said, absolutely not. I stopped eating pork for 3 months, and then my grandmother made a pork chop and I ate it, and I literally got sick saying to myself, I used to eat this crap. And she said, from that moment, you never wanted to eat pork again, right? I said, absolutely not, and haven't eaten it since. Right then and there, she said, that's how you have to think about her. It was the last taste, and that point you enjoyed, but now you can never go back to it because you know what it'll do to your body and it will reject it. If you can think about her in that way, you will have it easier for you to get over that situation, and now you are better in health. Why would you go back to something that will make you sick again? "Do you want to end up in the hospital again?" she replied. Once those words were spoken, it literally was a smack to my face. I immediately thanked her for that wisdom, as my culture requires me to do. But I asked her, how is it better for a man to move on without having the emotional attachment that seems to always interfere in one's life when it comes to a person? She said to me, "Do you like women?" I said, "Definitely." Then she says, "Learn how to enjoy them. It doesn't mean you have to have an oath to them, but sometimes we just want a good time, and if you give us that, we'll give you more. Learn how to enjoy us for being who we are, and you will be surprised of what you will get in the end." Now, mind you, I used to think that way, but again, I always had moments in my life that seems as if all of the short-term swings I've had with women turn out better than a long-term relationship. Because at the end of it, that person goes her way and I go mine. That isn't something that I believe in, but then, and it was something I was just doing, and I ventured into that with that woman, and I dealt with that for a while, the relationships seemed to be better. And I went through a phase with women, especially at that time I was 30 years old. That's when she cuts me off and says, "That's how you have to deal with women from now on, and you'll get a lot more from them in those cases, and you won't have to pay for anything. Just the effect of being around someone that they can have fun with will be payment enough. You may even get dinner on them, or a drink on them, or whatever. You just have to learn how to have fun for the sake of having fun, because women want to have fun. That's why they come to bars." Ha 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 ha. After relaxing and enjoying this beautiful conversation with this older woman, I realized that 2.5 hours had passed and I'd already gotten paid, so I didn't want to leave because I felt as if I found a new friend. And so much in return of everything, I offered her a ride home. That was the least that I can do now. Why would I do this? It's because I always learned that when knowledge is given to you, you return the favor, whether it's monetary or simple thank yous or in the form of a favor later on. Driving her home was the best way that I could accommodate and say thank you for everything that you spoke to me on. Ella lived on the east side, Dorchester, not too far from where my grandmother lived, and my aunt, being on the east side, can get crazy. So I didn't want her to catch an Uber and cab home. I felt better at making sure she got home safe, and I noticed the owner of the bar who knew her, and I told him I would take her home. He assured her that I was a good person and she was in good hands. She replied, "I know that already. This is my new buddy." After we got in the car and I dropped her on home, I thanked her again for the conversation. I admitted I needed that. She replied, "Well, you can make it up to me by buying me dinner." And I said, "You know what? No problem." This conversation was extremely therapeutic, especially at the time where I didn't realize that this was going to happen. This conversation made me realize the reasons why a lot of men cheat on their wives with other women, and women do the same thing with their husbands. A lot of relationships begin and end at bars because sometimes people get something from the bar that they don't get at home, and that's attention. Food for thought. And after all of that, I realized that this was the first date. First date.